We're good? We're ready? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Safari Pedal Show. I'm your host, Abby. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Safari Podcast YouTube Zoo Thing Crazy Wild Bandwagon. It's great to have you. We are back and better than ever with another episode in the For the Love of Pedals mini-series that I've been doing on the show. I am so pumped that Evan, who is the founder of Orange County Pedal Company, is going to be on the show. We're going to be diving into how he got into building pedals in the first place, the inspiration behind his unique sound and designs for his pedals, how running a pedal company has been for him, and tips that he has for producers, musicians, engineers, all forms of audio people who want to get into the pedal game. So I feel like there's not much more I can add to this intro. Thinking. Do I have anything else that I want to add to this intro? Nope, can't think of anything. Let's cut to the episode. Guys, please give a very warm Safari welcome to Evan, the founder of Orange County Pedal Company.
How's it going, everybody?
Hey, welcome to the show. What's up?
Hey, not much. Same old. It's too gloomy outside, that's for sure. Like, we live in Southern California. What's going on here? But good.
Minus the weather, but
Minus the weather.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm super pumped. So before we dive into all of the deets and juice about the pedals and your company, let's first start off with who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Well, like, my whole introduction to music was at 12 years old. Like, I started playing guitar because I wanted a guitar. There was no, like, rhyme or reason. I remember being in the back of the car and telling my parents, like, I want a guitar. And they go, why? I go, to meet girls. And it worked out okay. You know, I ended up getting married, and I think my wife likes that I play guitar. We'll see. But yeah, I started playing guitar at 12. My mom found me a really cool guitar teacher, like, right by the house. His name was Robbie. He played in a bunch of cool bands. He played for Rob Halford from Judas Priest and stuff like that. So I remember not only being impressed that, like, okay, this guy's really good, but also he worked professionally. And the part of me that knew I wanted to do this was very excited about that. And so I took lessons for a bunch of years and then started doing the thing that people do, right? Which is you play guitar in a band, garage bands in the neighborhood or whatever. And like a good capitalist, I decided to try and turn that into a business or something. And I ended up touring for a bunch of years out of high school, and then recording a bunch, doing session work on, on whatever project would hire me, right? Like a K-pop artist here or a TV thing. Through that process, I met a producer friend of mine, a composer friend of mine named Darren Smith, and he essentially hired me on every cool thing that he did. And so that was really cool, really beneficial, career-wise, but also personally. That's a really good friendship that I'm happy to have made through what it is that I do. So that's kind of my introduction, was coming at all of this from a performance side of things. And then obviously I got into the pedal building later on.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear, like, I absolutely love your pedal designs and the sound side. Like, what inspired the company?
It's a good question. Going back to what I had mentioned earlier, I can't do anything just for the fun, apparently. You know what I mean? Like, I learned to do something and then I always want to monetize it. Long story long, I started just tinkering in the garage, soldering things and thankfully not lighting anything on fire. And at a certain point, I realized, okay, I can do this, and let's see if I can, sell a couple of these. Really, what it was like the final step in something I've always wanted to do, which was create something tangible that you could hold. And obviously, as musicians in today's day and age, it's not like a lot of us are producing things that you can go out and buy at a store. You know what I mean? Like, I'm lucky. Like, some of the K-pop bands I've done, right? You can go to one of these stores and pick it up on disc, or they'll do these special editions. But beyond that, when you make something, it just kind of goes out, in WAV file format and exists, as something you can't really touch. You can experience, but you get where I'm going with that. And so the pedal thing was great because I had done the tinkering in the garage, and then I moved into having something that I could hold and share with friends and use on stage. And it was great to have something just physical that I've created and produced. And you're not sitting there like, okay, you know how it is when you're sitting there freaking out over a snare sound. And you spend 2 weeks on that snare sound, and you're still pulling your hair out at the end. You know, you're going like, it's not finished. It could be better. This forces me to come up with something that I can hold in my hand, look at, and go, it's done. It is what it is. And that was really nice to fulfill that kind of dream or whatever. And so that's how I got into this, and that's how the company was born. And yeah, we just started producing, I just started producing things and selling them.
That's amazing. And I love how you have the need to monetize everything. That is fantastic.
I know, right? Right.
On that note, I would love to talk a little bit about the pedals that you sell and what kind of inspired the sound of each of them and the design and whatnot.
Yeah, so I love the word inspiration, but I do feel like sometimes out there in the world, especially today, we think of inspiration as like, you know, a lightning bolt coming down and hitting us in the head or something. But you know, obviously, from all of your experience, and I know that it doesn't work that way. You got to sit down and you gotta just experiment. You got to try things, and through that process, you'll figure out what works, what doesn't work, so on. That's how I designed these. I would start with maybe a vintage schematic. You know, the best example of this would be the Buena Park Boost, right? So that is based off of a schematic of this tiny little circuit that was built into famous guitar players' output jacks, like on their Strats. And so Jerry Garcia used this really cool Strat, the Alligator Strat. And it had this little circuit built in the output jack. Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac, same thing. And I was looking at that circuit going, okay, well, this has been put into pedal form before. Let me rip it all apart and see what I can mess with to make this new, make this idea fresh. And I played around with transistors, and I went crazy. I went nuts. And I wound up with something that is probably fundamentally flawed. Like, some engineer could probably look at it and tell me 10 things that are wrong with it, but it sounds great, and I've gotten really cool feedback off of it. And so the designs are less inspired, more, you know, creations like Frankenstein's monster or something. Or like me and my kid were watching Toy Story the other day. Remember when they go to Sid's room and he has all those screwed up toys, like the head is on the wrong, you know, toy?
Yeah.
It's like that, you know, that's kind of how I like to think of myself in there. And I come up with some, if I do say myself, some pretty cool things as a result. So yeah.
I love the analogy of like the head
Right.
on the freaking claw walkers. For the edit, I'm gonna have to put like the Buena Park Boost like edited onto the.
Please do.
So people really understand what we're talking about. That is
Absolutely
fantastic. And so, like, how has it been for you? Just from an idea, you tinker, you build it. Like, how has it been turning that into a business and running a pedal company?
It's been good. It's like any business. I'm not sitting there expecting to, you know, make a ton of money in the first, you know, year. I think I'm a couple months into this, really. And so I've had a lot of ups and downs in terms of the process. I've had a lot of positive interactions in terms of customer support. So that's been really, really great. But the biggest thing that I've learned from that experience, and the takeaway, I think, moving forward in the company, is that this is all about relationship and human connection. You know, the pedals are, you have to do that. You know what I mean? You have to do that, and you have to do it right. That's the baseline. But beyond that, it's what you offer to the people buying your product. And so, you know, well, I'll tell you a quick story. I had this guy real close to where I live. He's over in Newport Beach. His name Frederick. And he was building these great amps in this little warehouse. And he would build amps for everybody. Rusty Anderson from Paul McCartney's band. Anybody that was playing professionally in 2003, 2004, he was building these great tube amps for. And I'll never forget, I was touring with Great White. Actually, I was being hired to play for this 80s band, Great White. And I had 3 days notice on the gig. Like, they called me and they go, okay, well, we need you in South Dakota in 3 days. And I kind of freaked out because obviously tours, there's usually a lot of prep work that goes into those. And so I had to do all the obvious things. I had to learn the music, but then I also had to ship the gear. And I can't overstate the value that Fred had for me over at his company, Divided by 13. I called him and I go, hey man, I got this gig. We have 3 days. What can we do? I need to ship a bunch of amps, basically. And he goes, come over. It was like a Saturday or something. He goes, come over. We'll hang out. We'll get them shipped out. Don't worry about it. He basically had to talk me off a ledge, calm me down. And so I show up at his facility, and the dude's sitting there by himself. He's working on, this amp for Mike Ness of Social Distortion. He's figuring out these cabinets for this other, wildly famous person that I'm, freaking out about. And here he is helping me get these amps all shipped out. So long story, again, exceptionally long. He was really valuable in terms of me seeing what a good owner of a company, a good producer of gear does for their clients, does for the people that use their product. And that, I think, has been the thing that I wanted to carry over into OC Pedal Co. Or at least the biggest thing that I've learned is a value to my brand. One final story. I had a customer. See, I had a customer reach out about a pedal. Saw it on Instagram, and he goes, I want that. It was the last one left. He goes, I want that. Can I buy it? I go, absolutely. And so he paid for it. Great. I noticed the address was real close, and so I go, hey man, I'm pretty near you. Do you want me to just run it by? I didn't want to freak the guy out, but I'm like, I can just run it over to you. You can have it today. And I ran over there, and I thought nothing of it. And he's sitting there kind of shocked and excited, not shocked in like a freaked out way, but shocked, excited that I was willing to bring it over to him. And so, again, the idea of a company where there's that personal connection, that's probably been the thing that I've learned is most important for me, and something I really want to offer to people that are interested in the product. So, yeah.
I love that. And I love how from your story that like it ties into everything you said, like that everyone was treated equally across the board in terms of whether how famous you are or not, that there was like consistent
crazy,
customer service. And I'm like, that is a great piece of advice going forward.
Yeah. Well, because we've all had the opposite, right? We've all had those people that are like, okay, who are you? How many followers do you have? And it's like, not many,
Not enough to be treated nicely, apparently.
That's right, for sure. And so that was always, it was great to get that. And now I want to give that, I guess.
I absolutely love that. That's a great piece of advice. So I kind of like this show in general is centered around starting out and being up and coming. Do you have any tips for perhaps it can be musicians, producers, engineers who are curious about getting into the pedal space, whether that's tips on running a business or anything you got?
I kind of want to go back to something I said earlier and maybe word it a little bit better. I had mentioned the fact that this fulfilled a dream of mine to produce something tangible, something you could hold. And a lot of that stemmed from, as I mentioned, the pain that you can experience producing music. It's a really great, rewarding thing, but it can also be painful because we tie ourselves so personally to what it is that we do. And, stepping back from that can be very therapeutic. And pedals, for instance, were my way of doing that. It's still music adjacent, but it's not necessarily writing a song, producing a song, which is something that I was doing heavily, And so in terms of advice, what I would say is even if you don't plan to start a company or whatever, just experiment with doing this. This can be your version of, drawing Harry Potter fan art and selling it on Etsy. You know what I mean? Like this can be your therapy and maybe a cool way to make a couple extra bucks if you come up with something cool, whatever. But it's so nice. Now, in terms of actual practical ways of achieving that, the number one piece of advice I would give would be to go out and buy Brian Wampler's book, How to Modify Guitar Pedals. And just based off of the title, you go like, modify? No, I want to build. This thing has this crazy, 3-chapter glossary at the beginning of the book that walks you through, what a diode is, what a transistor is, what an op amp is. And for somebody like me who had no, electrical engineering background, and, I'm a musician, I can subdivide to 32 and that's about it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't need to be a mathematician to be able to wrap my head around some of this stuff. And that was a really great resource that I actually discovered too late. I had been in the process for the first month or so, banging my head against the wall with some really kind of highbrow books that, I could barely read, man. It was too much for me. And this was a really good resource. So again, it's a good thing to do if you're feeling like you want to start a company, or if you just want to have a hobby. And then, yeah, buy Brian Wampler's book, How to Modify Guitar Pedals.
I love that. And I also love how you
Yeah.
compared it to selling Harry Potter fan art on Etsy. That I was like,
Right.
That is incredible.
Which I am a consumer of. I can't tell you how much fan art I've bought off of Etsy. You know, not necessarily Harry Potter related, although, you know, I'm into it. But yeah, man.
To sum up everything we spoke about, I always love to ask our amazing guest, wow, I can't speak English today, our amazing guest to drop either a piece of advice or freestyle, anything you want to say to the amazing Studio Animal viewers. So do you got something to say to the people?
Yeah, you know, I mean, first of all, my whole life is freestyle answers, as this, you know, interview series has highlighted. The last thing is completely unrelated to music, although, you know, us musicians, I think, maybe can take this to heart. I wanted to talk for a second about how what we do is important, but who we are is more important. You know, I had mentioned earlier getting so wrapped up in the music side of things, putting so much of ourselves into it can be amazing. It can be great because we can produce some really cool things we're proud of, on and on and on, right? But it can also produce some pretty, you know, gnarly results. You know, if we get rejected, which is a part of this, you know, I can't tell you how many people told me no and will continue to tell me no. And it hurts every time because those rejections are not always, you know, kindly put, or they feel very personal or whatever. And so as much as we all can wrap ourselves up in what it is that we do, and we can almost assign our identities to that, I think it's really important for people out there listening that if you're struggling with your identity and you're struggling with like who you are within the music space, remember that music is a part of your life, but it isn't your whole life. And I would encourage you to take care of yourself first and foremost, because if you take care of yourself, if you allow yourself to be, you know, in community with your fellow, you know, the people around you, that'll help inform what it is that you do. And so it's kind of like letting go and being less tunnel visioned on the music, less tunnel visioned on producing, you know, whatever product, and being more comfortable in your own skin, I guess. That can be really beneficial and circle around and impact what it is that you're doing. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone out there listening. It's something so kind of foreign to us in practice. It sounds great when we hear it, right? But it's so foreign to us in practice. And so, you know, to sum it up, take care of yourselves.
Take care of yourselves. I absolutely love that. And I especially love that you said, like, it's not your whole life, because it's so easily, like, I will say, like, totally struggle with that also. Like, it really becomes your whole existence. So I think that was such a great reminder, and I appreciate you sharing that insight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for hopping on the podcast and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, this was great. Anytime you want me to come on and babble nonsensically, I would be happy to. So.
For sure. Absolutely. We're going to have to do a pedal reunion episode.
Heck yes.